Hello everyone, Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. Today is September the 3rd, 12:30 Rio de Janeiro time. We are starting one more live stream. And as usual, if you are participating here live with us, you have the possibility of suggesting topics of your interest to be discussed. And if you have questions, it could be questions of any nature. It doesn't need to be like legal questions. If you have legal questions, I will do my best to answer them without configuring like a consultation. We are precluded from providing, like free consultations as per the Brazilian Bar Association. So what we can do, we can explore or explain a little bit better a certain topic, but without going too much into the specifics, if that makes sense. And let's take a look at the news. Let's take a look and see what's going on in Brazil as we speak. This is like Estadão, a Brazilian newspaper, a major Brazilian newspaper. They've been around for 150 years. And they are probably among like the top 3 newspapers nationwide. And here the main headline is about former President Bolsonaro trial, which is going on as we speak. And the headline says, the defense says that Bolsonaro was dragged into a accusation of a coup and is addressing like this moral seed. Moral seed was part of the Bolsonaro administration at some capacity. And Moral Seed was providing damaging testimonial, and they're saying, well, he is not like, reliable, right? And just as some background, I think many of you, particularly those who are interested in Brazil things, you're probably following up, the whole discussion, the whole, situation. And it kind of goes like this, like Bolsonaro lost the 2022 election. And back then, like minister, the Supreme, STF, the Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes, he was actually adjudicating election causes during the presidential election. And then, there is this understanding that Alexandre de Moraes was against Bolsonaro and was doing whatever he could to reduce the chances of President Bolsonaro winning the election. And then President Lula won the election by a very tiny margin. So the understanding in the Bolsonaro administration was that basically the election had been stolen and they should be doing something about it, right? And this something about it, of course, is now being interpreted as an attempted coup. There was no, talks about, gathering arms or, forming an army, to depose President Lula. And there was on August the 1st, there was an invasion of the Brazilian Congress, very similar to what happened in the United States. If I'm not mistaken, I think President Bolsonaro was actually traveling in the United States for, a break. And, they're framing like, it was because of the actions of President Bolsonaro that people invaded Congress, right? Like, so this is the whole thesis for the Brazilian Supreme Court to, being adjudicating to have this trial on President Bolsonaro. Another criticism that we hear a lot, probably not as much as it would be the case if it wasn't like the concerns that people nowadays have about expressing their views. But another concern is like, this kind of nuance, like in the past, the Brazilian Supreme Court would be just like the U.S. Supreme Court in a sense that their only function would be to adjudicate things, right? And nowadays, the Brazilian Supreme Court is not only adjudicating, but they are also investigating, and they are going, a way further than what is expected from a neutral judgment body, right? So that's the biggest criticism, like we see nowadays regarding the Brazilian Supreme Court. And we're not taking sides, right? Like, I mean, I think, there is like very damaging evidence against former President Bolsonaro. But at the same time, what's going on with the Brazilian Supreme Court, I don't think, anyone who understands anything about law would agree that this is normal, right? Like there is some type of excess going on at the Brazilian Supreme Court, and that connects to President Trump, who's actually threatening, right? Like, the Brazilian government saying, listen, if you guys keep, persecuting President Bolsonaro, like we're going to do something about it, right? Like we're going to chase, the Brazilian Supreme Justices. But that's the whole thing going on, right? And very interesting here, you can even watch, this is a live stream of President Bolsonaro's trial, okay? So, for whoever is interested in taking a look, maybe practicing some Portuguese, right? You could access Estadão now and basically just watch, the trial as it goes. All right, let's take a look, see if we have some of our friends around. All right. It doesn't look like we have anyone, which is a kind of yellow flag, I would say. So if you are live right now, if you could just type something in our chat window, I just want to make sure that you guys are able to chat. There was an occasion in the past in which, for some reason, people wouldn't be able to chat. So, it was like a 15-minute radio silence. And I said, like maybe something is not right. And then I refreshed the page, and all of a sudden, people could chat again. All right. So if you are able to, watch this live stream and chat, Oliuni, all right, I'm here live, no question. Thank you, Oliuni. Thank you so much. Oliuni pulled the trigger. Thank you, Oliuni, for letting me know. It looks like everything is going well, as it should. Let's do some advertisement over here, if you guys don't mind. I'm going to show the Remax ad from Remax Nomad States in Rio de Janeiro. They have partnered up with us. They are based in Rio de Janeiro, but they work through Follow Brazil. And the idea here is that, some people, they are unable to hire our services for one reason or another, and then they could hire, a real estate agency that is trying to follow our standards, right? And they are also being trained to select properties that would qualify for the Brazil Investor Visa, okay? That's the type of work we're trying to develop with them. Like whenever there is someone who needs like a realtor, we kind of send this person their way. And if they have a need, right, like for legal services, like, cross-border, people familiar with US, UK standards, like they send their customers, their clients our way, okay? So this is the contact information for the agency. Again, they are based in Rio de Janeiro, but they have listings through Follow Brazil. As you probably know, Remax, the Remax comes from the United States, but nowadays Remax has a presence in Brazil. And this particular agency is working with us, and they have listings through Follow Brazil, all right? So take note if you need it. Take a screenshot, and there you go. Let's go back. Let's go back to our main feed, and we have more people over here. We have Anita. Hello, I'm listening in. I'm interested in visiting Brazil as an American. It's a little harder. All right, Anita, you're probably talking about the e-visa, right? So, yes, up to April the 10th of this current year, U.S. citizens could basically just, buy a ticket and show up at the airport with a passport, and they would be good to go. Nowadays, there is a need for a e-visa for American citizens to come to Brazil. And this was a change promoted by the current federal administration on the basis of reciprocity, right? So the concept here is that, former President Bolsonaro said, listen, let's not make the lives of our American fellows, harder, right? Like they're coming here to spend the big bucks, so let's make things easy. So President Bolsonaro said no visa requirement. And now President Lula came and said, well, I don't think this is fair because, Brazilians need to, spend a lot of money. They need to, spend a day like going to the U.S. consulate. So I think there should be reciprocity. Like if Brazilians face a hard time to get a visa, I think U.S. citizens should at least, apply for some sort of visa. So what President Lula did was to have, like a compromise instead of giving U.S. citizens and actually also Canadians and Australians a really hard time, to have to, go to a consulate and so on. So President Lula got the e-visa in place, and the e-visa is typically handled over the internet. There are some well-known glitches, like particularly in terms of uploading pictures. Sometimes they ask you for stuff that is not in the original list. There are some, glitches and some oddities about the process, but overall it's a fair process, right? Like I think it's an interesting decision by President Lula, right? Like we wouldn't say that this is like a bad decision because again, basically U.S. citizens, Australians, and Canadians, they need to pay a fee, but they don't need to go anywhere, right? Like they just need to apply through the internet. So the burden is not so much, I would say, to kind of deter American citizens from flying into Brazil, Anita. I hope that makes sense. Let me know if you have any other concerns, right? Like, I think Brazil should be very welcoming to U.S. citizens. So let me know if you're facing any other challenges to visit Brazil. Matt and Adrian Gain is on. Wow, good to see you here, Matt. Good to see you and Adrian. Wayne, it's okay. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you for sharing. Michael Flunkert, listening from Canada. All right, Michael. Good to have you over here. So are you planning to visit Brazil? Have you visited Brazil? How is your journey towards residency to Brazil going on? Let us know. Sax Dragon, Olá Luciano, is the São Paulo office open on Saturdays? Are you see about visiting on a Saturday this month? I hope all is well. Good to see you. Good to see you, Dragon. Yes. We were talking about you like this past week, like, our folks were saying, well, is Dragon visiting us or not? Like we want to have, some fun time with Dragon. Dragon, we don't open on Saturdays. We are open from Monday to Friday, okay? Typically from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. But if you want to come over like later in the day, for those of you who don't know, like Dragon, he's a musician. And he was offering, I think I can share that, right, Dragon, because you wrote in the chat. So I'm not sharing like information that's not public already, but Dragon said maybe I can take like an instrument and play something over there. Like we have been actually inaugurating our new office in São Paulo. Like we just moved it. Like it is within the same building. Before we were on the 7th floor, now we are on the 12th floor, and it's a really nice, new office. So that's the idea, to have a Dragon over, like, playing some music if we are lucky to make it happen, right, Dragon? All right, Michael. Already have a 5-year tourist visa, but I'm also dual citizen, Canada, Germany, so visa not really needed. Michael, you are correct, right? Like when you enter Brazil, you can pick a passport for the purpose of your identification. And as far as I remember, Germany does not require, or German citizens are not required a visa when entering Brazil, all right? Just a heads up, like if you're gonna apply for immigration benefits down the line, ideally you would align the passport that you're gonna be using to your current place of residency, right? So if you live in Canada, right? If you live in Canada, if you work in Canada, typically from the Brazilian immigration perspective, it's going to make more sense for you to be using your Canadian passport, all right? But just for the sake of visiting Brazil, it is absolutely fine to present your German passport, of course, if it is valid and up to date. All right, who else? Anita, using the website is painful. I'm fine with paying the fee, but it has been hard uploading documents. It's error prone. Exactly, Anita. Just like I said, right? Like, I mean, this website, it's just a mess. And you know what? This is surprising to me because the website is provided by VFS, and VFS is the number one. It's the global provider of immigration solutions or immigration software to governments throughout the world, right? So, for instance, the Portuguese government uses VFS heavily in the United States to kind of interface all the visa applications that U.S. citizens are going to file with the Portuguese government, right? So VFS is actually a pretty big entity. A private entity is not like the government itself. But this time, I don't know if they rushed to get this thing online. But you know what, like Anita, that's just repetitive. Like, I mean, this kind of concern, this kind of complaint, like we hear all the time. So what you can do, we can actually file for the e-visa on your behalf. Our fee is nominal, right? Like, I think this is a kind of service that we actually lose money on. We're just, serving people to get you in touch with our firm so you can potentially use our firm for more meaningful services down the line, all right? If I'm not mistaken, the application fee, I think it's like $150 plus the $80.90 charged by the Brazilian government /VFS. Just as a curiosity, the $80.90, $80 goes to Brazil, 90 cents goes to VFS. So maybe that's why VFS is saying, you know what, just take this crappy website and be happy with it because I'm getting 90 cents of dollar for each application that I'm processing, right? So maybe they're thinking you cannot expect much. Of course, it's not your fault. Maybe that was a bad arrangement with the Brazilian government. It could be, I don't know, $80 to the Brazilian government, maybe $5 to VFS. That VFS could potentially have, better resources or more resources to make this right the first time, right, Anita? All right. Brazil Vibes, good to see you, Brazil Vibes. Hi, Mr. Oliveira. Hi, Brazil Vibes. During the last live stream, the topic of União Estável came up. If a foreigner is found guilty of União Estável, what is at stake? All right, Brazil Vibes. So, maybe the word is not like guilty because it's not a crime, right? I mean, just like a kind of mild joke here. But the point is, like, if you are found in a União Estável, which roughly translates to a civil union, right? You are on the hook for pretty much the same things you would for a marriage, right? So nowadays, União Estável in Brazil means the same thing as a marriage, right? So the same things that a spouse could ask for under a marriage, that's the same things. These are the same things that the União Estável partner will be able to ask, right? So typically, they could ask for half, like the assets, the monies, the whatever you got during the course of the relationship, right? Naturally, whatever you had before the União Estável, I mean, these are personal assets, right? And whatever was acquired during the course of the União Estável, those assets would be like common property. All right, I hope that makes sense. Now, for a support to be granted, this is going to be typically the case when let's say if there is a foreign citizen supporting a Brazilian citizen who's going to be someone working. Not working from home, but taking care of their home, right? So the foreign citizen is the breadwinner, and the Brazilian is the stay-at-home partner, right? So if in this case, if the relationship lasted like a couple of years, a judge could very well say, you know what, now this person needs, some level of education to go back, like to the workplace, and I'm gonna, make you pay 2 years of, spousal support, even though there was no marriage. They would pay, spousal support to the União Estável partner. All right. So typically, support and distribution of assets. These are the things, Brazil Vibes, that would be at stake. Okay, Brazil Vibes. I have a home in the United States and a pension based in the United States. Are those assets at risk? So, the home, I would assume you had this home before entering into a União Estável. And now, the retirement account, right? The concept here is that you probably had, like the retirement account prior to the União Estável, but maybe, during the União Estável, naturally your retirement account increased in value, right? Increased in value, right? So a Brazilian judge could, in theory, say, listen, whatever monies you made in the United States, they should be distributed, right? Now, sometimes it's difficult for the Brazilian judge to reach stuff in the United States, so there is one thing is going to be like the legal concept of how things work from a legal perspective. And then there is another thing, which is like how things are going to play out in reality, right? Like, so they are not always the same thing. So what I told you, it is the dynamic of how things work from a legal perspective. Now, how this is going to play out in real life, then nobody knows, right? Then this is going to depend on legal representation on both sides and how the judge is going to interpret the level of information that the local partner has on stuff in the United States, and so on. Hermon, hey Luciano and chatroom friends, good to see you, Hermon. It has been a while. Michael Flunkert, spouse is Brazilian. We are retired. Congratulations, Michael. So yes, Michael, very common, right? Very common for like couples, like with a Brazilian and a U.S. citizen, a Brazilian Canadian, a Brazilian and Australian, a Brazilian and a British folk to retire in Brazil, right? Many people are actually retiring in Portugal, right? But it's almost like a fla-flu. I'm not sure if you guys know what a fla-flu is. I'm gonna write over here. Fla-flu means Flamengo versus Fluminense. So Flamengo and Fluminense, they are two soccer teams from Rio de Janeiro. And the Fla-flu, like whenever we say Fla-flu, we mean that, like each team is going to have its own crowd, and they are not always discussing things in terms of, real arguments. I mean, they're just like, people who love their teams and they are going to choose a side. So that's the same thing with Portugal and Brazil. There are many reasons for people to choose Brazil. There are many reasons for people to choose Portugal. And it's so interesting, right? Like to see different profiles of like binational couples picking either Brazil or either Portugal. And in my experience, most of the time, they're going to be pretty settled. It's not like I say, well, I don't know, I like Portugal, I like Brazil, I'm not sure. I never saw the situation. Whenever people come to us, they're going to say, listen, I want Portugal because this and this and that. And other people, they're going to say, I want Brazil, and because of those reasons, right? So that's the meaning of the fla-flu term in Portuguese. All right, Dragon. Okay, I will try to see if I can visit an evening on a Friday. I was hoping to visit on a Saturday because my friends who are fluent in Portuguese are only free on Saturday and Sunday. I'll figure it out. All right, Dragon, you are welcome to bring your friends. Just remember, everybody at the office speaks English, okay? So you're going to be very welcome, and you're not going to miss English speakers at the office whenever you show up. Dragon, yes, I have acquired all the things I need to give you guys. A little concert over there. All right, that's so nice, Dragon. I just need to figure out how to make the time days work for me as I will make your team soon. Absolutely, Dragon. Whenever it works for you, listen, this is a courtesy, right? So we're not like... we're not saying that you need to show up. It's just like an option if you want to, show up. You're going to be certainly cheered at the firm, all right? Brazil vibes for those who want to date in Brazil long term. In your opinion, what is the best way to avoid união estável, not date, live in separate residence, or get a dog and live alone? Brazil vibes, there is no workaround, okay? There is no workaround. There is no way out, right? Like if you are in a relationship with a Brazilian partner, you are exposed to união estável. There is no prenuptial that will hold water. Nowadays, if you live separate, it does not matter. If it is like a short-term relationship, it does not matter as well. Right, so maybe, right, I'm just trying to think here aloud. I think one of the best things you can do to mitigate or to reduce the chances of, headaches down the line is to really, pick someone who's not showing, signs of a financial interest from the onset, right? And this is another topic. Very common, I see, a relationship between a Brazilian and a foreign citizen. It could be a U.S. citizen, it could be like an European. And from the onset, the foreign citizen is going to be providing some level of financial support to the Brazilian person, right? So in this case, you are setting yourself up for trouble down the line, right? Like first thing, because yes, this person is going to start to rely on you financially, and therefore, I think there is an understanding, an expectation that união estável is being formed as you speak. And the second nuance, or the second take on that, is that this is very rare between two Brazilians, right? I'm not sure if that's even common between two U.S. citizens, for instance, but that's something very weird from a Brazilian perspective, right? So I never saw in my whole life, two friends in which one friend would be supporting the other during a romantic relationship, right? And this is so common, like when I see a foreign citizen and a Brazilian, first they say, well, you know what, I just sending, I don't know, $200 a month, but now I'm sending $500. I'm sending $500 a month is nothing for me. But this person is sending every single month, right? So you're creating a dependency, right? Like the Brazilian folk, the Brazilian partner is relying on you to live, right? So you are setting yourself up for trouble down the line, and maybe just because of this behavior. And listen, I'm not talking about you, right? And apologies if it sounds like I'm talking about. I'm just talking in general, right? And I'm providing with background information so you can, do something to reduce those chances of being found in a união estável to happen, right? But now I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about our experience with other foreign citizens, right? And then again, if you are starting a relationship with money as a component of such romantic partnership, I think it's just natural for you to expect money to be an issue once this relationship is over, right? I think it makes sense. And again, it's not like I'm not criticizing. I'm just sharing thoughts to help you envision your future in Brazil with your romantic partner. All right. I wanna also tell you, if you are enjoying our live stream, don't forget to like, to subscribe. When you like our live stream, of course, you help our business, and you also help other people just like you to find our content. So I would appreciate if you could just click real quick on the thumbs up like button. That's gonna be appreciated. All right, let's see what else. Michael, have attempted V10 11 last year. I discovered errors in our Brazilian marriage certificate, now rectified with apostilled birth and marriage certificate. So legal in Brazil. What I now find is criminal record check also need to be apostilled. This may creating timing issues as websites says 3 month validity, other sites say 6 months, and need for translation, etc. Yes, Michael, that's the reason why most people hire our help, right? Like for you to kind of avoid those, surprises down the line, right? So that's a service we provide. If you are in Brazil, we have the FBI background checks in São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. I think we should have in Brasilia as well. I'm just going to check with our Rio de Janeiro team. But yes, you're going to need the FBI background check with an apostille. The apostille should be issued in Washington, D.C. FBI is a federal agency, and naturally, you're not going to have an apostille from the state level. You need an apostille from the federal government level, and therefore, this is going to be issued in Washington, D.C. This is something we do, like not on a daily basis, but at least once a week, we get one of those done. And if you need our help, just reach out to the office. But yes, it's 90 days good, right? So if you got a background check and I don't know, it is like 60 days old, probably you're going to discard this version because you're not going to be able, most probably you're not going to be able to get an apostille until this thing expires, right? And yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, and it's very unfortunate, Michael, because in other countries, right? Like for instance, the UK or the Arab Emirates, right? Like they all have such national certificates issued, like upon request on the spot, meaning it's like something you get right away. And typically to get an apostille is much easier. So nowadays, U.S. citizens, they do face, a higher burden to go through for the, marriage-based permanent residency. Yes, Michael, nice sharing. Anita, Dragon, yes, it's held together with chewing gum. All right. Okay, now I saw Dragon says 90 cents per application is crazy. No wonder the site is held together with chewing gum. Yes, Dragon, that's 90 cents what they get. Exactly. Like how can you blame, right? And yep. All right, Brazil Vibes, thank you so much. Brazil Vibes is buying me today. Is buying me lunch and dessert. So nice to have you over here, Brazil. Thank you for your generosity. Very appreciated. I love it. Thank you so much. All right, Churin Micho, good to see you again, Churin. Good day. I will start my retirement residency visa when I come to Rio in February. Is December a good time to schedule a consultation with you? Yes, Churin, that's about right. We like to start the work with our clients a couple of months before your planned arrival in Brazil. This way we can work on all the documents that you need to work when still in the United States, right? So you can even bring it then with you when you travel to Brazil. A couple of months sounds just about right, okay? For some, like the digital nomad, typically a month would be enough. But the Brazil retirement visa, Turing is actually something very high end as we speak, right? So, as you probably heard, if you've been attending our live streams, the digital nomad is something very entry level. It doesn't get you anywhere, right? Like you could stay in Brazil, for several years under the digital nomad in theory, right? Because in theory, it should be renewable just once, but in reality, like we've been getting multiple renewals approved, but it doesn't lead you anywhere, meaning that if you've been here in Brazil for 5 years, you're not going to achieve permanent residency or anything at all. Like once this is over, it is over, right? Now, on the retirement side is different. On the retirement side, very impressive. Just in a couple of years, in theory, you could apply for permanent residency, right? So that's a really great option to achieve, like a permanent residency in Brazil in just a couple of years, right? So retirement nowadays in Brazil, it's a very high-end immigration path, right? Like it's probably going to lose only to marriage and child-based permanent residency in Brazil, all right? So just sharing that you're very lucky to meet the requirements. And yes, your timeline sounds about right. Okay, Michael, I'm Canadian, not American. Got it, Michael. Yes. So in your case, all right, Michael. So that changes, right? Now we're talking about the background check, right? Because in the United States, like let's say, the biggest amount of time you're going to waste is going to be on getting the FBI background check apostilled in Washington, D.C. So now I don't know, like in Canada, how long it takes you to get an apostille. But let's say if that's something quick, let's say in a week that you could get, and if you have, let's say, the background check physically with you, all you need to do is to ship this document from Brazil to Canada to a service provider who could get you the apostille on top of the background check and send this document back to you in Brazil. Okay, so first you get the apostille, and after that you're going to get the sworn translation. You cannot change the order, right? Like it does matter. First an apostille, and then you're going to get a sworn translation. But if you're Canadian, there is some hope for you, all right? Check with a service provider, Michael, or check with us, like if you are tired of trying to guess and troubleshoot things on your own. All right, Matt Gaines. Welcome, Matt. How far in advance do we need to schedule with the consulate in Chicago to have our marriage certificate apostilled? Are they flexible on scheduling? Matt, I'm not very familiar with the Brazilian consulate in Chicago. It depends on the consulate. Nowadays, some consulates, they are overwhelmed, particularly the ones in California, like San Francisco. We hear horror stories like every day, like, they're going to schedule something for 2 months down the line, and you send a message asking for something, they don't reply your emails, you try to call. And we tried ourselves. If you try to call the Brazilian consulate in San Francisco, guess what they say? Well, we don't take the phone. Like, you got to send an email, and then you send an email and nobody answers, right? Pretty concerning, but that's what it is. And I don't know about Chicago, but typically, consulates are going to have availability like, a month and a half down the line in average, Okay, Matt. So, yes, you could try, another consulate just to show, they're good consulates. Like there is a Brazilian consulate in Houston, and they're pretty good at answering emails, right? So what you could do, Matt, is to send an email, and if you have like a urgent timeline, to plead some flexibility by the consulate, and maybe you could get, right? Like, particularly in Texas, because we have a presence in Texas, we have a closer relationship with the Brazilian consulate in Houston, and it's not unusual for us or even for other people without representation to reach out and be able to get, some, flexibility in terms of timing, right? But again, there are others, right? Like, the Brazilian consulate in San Francisco, in which, based on the stories or the information that is shared with us, by other people, chances are not great. Okay. Matt, we plan to have your firm assist us with this. Chicago is the closest to us. Yes, that's a good point, Matt. Yes, you cannot pick a consulate, right? So I'm just sharing about different consulates to explain that there is no standard level of service across the consulates. Like they vary substantially. Okay, and yes, you need to work with the consulate in charge of your jurisdiction. So you cannot, go around and shop for a consulate. Okay, Matt, and I see the message here. We'll consider Houston as well. No, I'm just mentioning, yes, for the sake of explaining, but we need to work with Chicago. Something that sometimes helps is like we are, licensed in Brazil, we licensed in the United States. So when we send a message to the consulates, we say, listen, we are a lawyer/law firm, right? Like sometimes it does help a little bit with the communication. I'm not saying that we're going to get something special. I'm just saying that sometimes, they say, well, they're lawyers, they're working over here, like maybe we should answer their email, right? So that's all. All right, Matt, I hope that was helpful. Okay, let's take a look and see what else we have here in terms of topics. And folks, don't forget, we don't need to discuss only legal stuff. I understand we are a law firm, so naturally people are going to be joining our live streams to talk about legal stuff. But listen, we want to make this live stream fun for you, right? So don't restrict yourself to only legal topics. There are no bad topics here, right? Like if you want to talk about music, if you want to talk about culture, if you want to talk about different cities, if you want to discuss, about an ideal city, giving your wish list, these are all good topics for us to discuss, all right? I want to emphasize that so it doesn't sound like we are in a legal consultation, because we are not, and we cannot actually provide legal consultation. So, the broader the subjects we are discussing here, the better, right? So don't refrain yourself from asking other stuff that is not legal in essence. All right, we got Wayne. Have you ever dealt with the consulate in Boston? The third most spoken language in Massachusetts is Portuguese. Yes, Wayne, like we probably dealt with this consulate. I particularly don't deal a lot with the consulates. Like we have a fairly, not large, but we have a team, right? Like, and so typically, whenever people are dealing with the consulates, right? Whenever we have a need to deal with the consulates, we're going to have, people from our team contacting them directly, right? So I'm typically not in the loop, and I just know about how the consulates behave when we have like repetitive feedback, right? Like, so the one for San Francisco, and listen, I'm not bad mouthing San Francisco. I'm just sharing as an example. Maybe they are facing some type of, a crazy demand that they cannot, adapt themselves fast enough to handle. And in this case, they do what they need to do. But I'm just mentioning because there is a large variation of services across the consulates. All right. And that's very interesting sharing, Wayne. Yes, I'm very familiar with the Brazilian, community in Boston, right? Actually, through Fall, Massachusetts, and I hear a lot of stuff like there are not Congress people, but like people at the city councils. There are many Brazilians like participating in the city councils. Sometimes achieving, like very interesting positions at the government level. And they are through Fall, Massachusetts, not only Boston. Correct me if I'm wrong, Wayne. Correct me if I'm wrong. Michael, eu gosto do Brasil, tenho muitos amigos lá. Fala pouquinho, entende muito. All right, Michael is showing us like his Portuguese. Yes, Michael. Very good. Yes, I mean, Brazil it's such an interesting, place, right? Like we have many challenges, challenges related to safety. We have personal challenges in following the rules, right? Like Brazilians are pretty famous for, being too creative for their own good. But from the friendship, from the personal connection perspective, I mean, Brazil is like a really great country, right? Like I mean, you can really easily make friends and create like deep connections that go so beyond. It's so much more than just like a financial type of relationship. Like we were discussing, like at some point in this live stream, we were talking about romantic relationships, right? But if you're familiar with Brazil, you know how people can build a human deep connection to you, even though maybe you don't speak Portuguese like Michael does, right? Maybe you just speaks like a little bit of Spanish, but I guarantee it does not matter your fluency or your languages. You're gonna be able to make real friendships in Brazil. That's so nice, so good sharing, Michael. Anita, I'm looking into neighborhoods around São Paulo. Since I like cities, I'm retired and want to live in a walkable, safe part of town. Any recommendations? Anita, yes, yeah. So there are, I'm going to write some here, right? Some neighborhoods, right? There is Moema, okay? Moema, it's one of them. There is Vila Olímpia, Moema, Vila Olímpia. There is also Jardins. All right, so these are three neighborhoods, Anita, that you could consider for your planning, right? And they resemble, like for those of you who know like Rio de Janeiro, they resemble a little bit of Leblon. Of course, there is no beach by those neighborhoods, but they are very walkable, right? And naturally, because they are in São Paulo City, they're walkable. They have many amenities and features. Like they are on the more costly side, right? Like not surprisingly, they are going to be more costly, but they do have those features, Anita, that you are talking about, right? Like they are safer. Now, Anita, I gotta tell you something, right? Like if safety is a major concern, you could maybe consider Florianopolis, right? Florianopolis, the distinction is that Florianopolis, it has this big city kind of feel, but it's just like 500,000 people, right? Like São Paulo is like 20 million people, right? And nowadays, unfortunately, I think that São Paulo is not doing a good job from a safety perspective, right? Like, I mean, I really hate to say that. Like, I was born in São Paulo, by the way, but São Paulo is not doing a good job in terms of, like curbing criminal activities. There is a lot of, robbery, and it's just like, difficult. It's just difficult to, say otherwise. All right. So if safety, and it looks like, correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like safety is a major concern for you, I would suggest you to check something like, Florianopolis in the south. You could also consider, like smaller towns. If you want to stay closer to São Paulo for some reason, there is also these two cities. They are super safe. Valinhos and Vinhedo, 50-minute drive from São Paulo. Of course, like if you are not around the rush hour, okay? All right, if you are around the rush hour, instead of 50 minutes, it becomes 2 hours, okay? But, if you're driving on a Sunday morning, it's just like 50 minutes from São Paulo to these two cities. I did live in Vinhedo. It was paradise. It was the best place I ever lived at, right? It's like 50 minutes from São Paulo. It's just like paradise to me, right? Like, I mean, they have all the amenities that you need. They have, large gyms. They are not overcrowded. They have a really nice, supermarkets. They have all the convenience. It does have like a small city type of feel, but it's close enough to São Paulo for you to visit São Paulo whenever you want. So these are some of the cities that I recommend, like if you want to stay close to São Paulo, but I don't know if I would recommend you to stay in São Paulo, even if you stick with the neighborhoods that I told you about. All right. Okay, what else? What else we have over here? Wilbert, Senhor Oliveira, tudo bem? Tudo bem, Wilbert. I returned to the States after my 2 months staying in Bahia. In my 25 years of traveling to Brazil, this was the most outstanding trip. Thank you so much for your advice. I need your help to start on my retirement visa. So glad you're here, Wilbert. So glad you're here. And we do have, consultations open with people who are already in Bahia, right? So, Bahia is an absolutely, blessed in terms of community ties, culture in general, right? Like Bahia is the home for capoeira, right? Capoeira, typical Brazilian fight art, right? And capoeira is from Bahia. Bahia has an extremely rich history as well, and like it is just impressive, the types of relationships we see between foreign citizens and Brazilians from Bahia, right? It's really, really, really nice. Now, I'm just curious, like, was it, were you like in Salvador, Wilbert? Like Salvador is the capital of Bahia, and then there are smaller cities, right? Like Feira de Santana, and then you have some cities by the coast that they are absolutely amazing, such as Porto Seguro, Morro de São Paulo, right? There's so many amazing cities. I used to go to Bahia a lot in my 20s, right? So nowadays I don't go often. We do have some level of real estate activity in Salvador. There are some, somewhat close by beaches. What is the name of the beach? There is one that's been recurring over here. It's not in Salvador. I think it's like an hour and a quarter from Salvador. But yes, I mean, a lot of activity and an amazing state, Wilbert. Really nice sharing. Let us know which cities you visited. I'm curious about. Okay, Anita, I want to be able to still travel and live near a major airport. Thanks. Yes, safety is a major concern for me. Right, Anita, I hear you, right? So Vinhedo Valinhos could be really good choices for you because like you can easily take like an Uber to the São Paulo International Airport, and you are absolutely right. Like Brazil is not like the United States in a sense that there are major airports throughout the country. Not in Brazil. In Brazil, you have the São Paulo International Airport. And then you have everything else, right? Like nothing compares to the São Paulo International Airport. So if traveling is important to you, it may make sense to remain close to São Paulo, to have easy access to other areas, right? And in second, I would probably mention Rio de Janeiro, right? Like Rio de Janeiro, unfortunately, is not that better, is not so much better than Brazil on the safety perspective, but there is also Galeão, which is the international airport in Rio de Janeiro, okay? And let me go back again to Florianópolis, right? Like Florianópolis is a much smaller town, just 500,000 people, but the airport is also a pretty decent airport, right? So from Florianópolis, you can fly pretty much everywhere, okay? Of course, like the tickets, they're not going to be as affordable as they are in São Paulo. In São Paulo, just because of the volume And we actually have more than one airport, right? Like we have the international one, which is like the Aeroporto de Guarulhos. We also have like a smaller one right in the heart of São Paulo city, and there are so many flights. And then typically because of competition, airfares are going to be substantially cheaper when bought in São Paulo. And it's very common, like for people which looks weird at the first sight, but for people to come from Amazon, right? So we're talking about someone coming from the north all the way to the south. And then from São Paulo, they're going to fly, I don't know, to the United States, right? Because if you're buying, airfare from the north, from the northeast, or from, other areas, typically the cost is going to be substantially higher, sometimes double the cost, right? So people will find that, by traveling to São Paulo and then from São Paulo to other places, many times they are going to be saving big bucks. All right. Michael, I may need to have an actual consult. The next trip will be in Brasilia, not Rio. Yes, Michael. So we have actually an office in Brasilia. That's our third office in São Paulo. A nice office, by the way, in Brasilia. We have a single employee in Brasilia, just because it's a new office, and we don't have a lot of demand. And the reason why we wanted to set up an office in Brasilia is because the presence of the embassies, right? So Brasilia is the capital of Brazil, as you probably know. And because of that, most of the embassies, they are located in Brasilia. So for instance, right, like we have the U.S. consulate in São Paulo, we have the U.S. consulate in Rio de Janeiro, but there is a single embassy, right? Like the embassy itself, the U.S. embassy is located in Brasilia. And so is the one from the UK, from Russia, from France, from Norway. So pretty much all the embassies, with a few exceptions, they are going to be located in Brasilia. So that's why we set up this office. Sometimes we need documents from the embassies for our clients' cases, and a presence in Brasilia just makes sense as well to connect us to the embassies, right? For instance, the U.S. embassy, they will prefer to refer out cases to law firms with a presence in Brasilia. Right now that we have a presence in Brasilia, the U.S. embassy is sending us more, referrals, if that makes sense. All right. So we have a few minutes left. So if you have a final participation for today, a final comment, just go ahead, and letting you know that our next live stream is going to be next Wednesday, right? So today is the 3rd, and next one is going to be on the 10th. Okay, we are trying to settle on the 21st as our second live stream on a Sunday, right? And what we are trying to follow over here, so you can also organize your planning, is to keep our live streams as consistent as possible on Wednesdays. And then we're going to try to have, and so far we've been successful at that, we're trying to keep 2 live streams on a Sunday, right? The first one we had, it was actually, the last one we had, it was actually August the 31st. We have one scheduled already for the 21st, and I'm unsure, we're still trying to work out the second one, which should be either on the 14th or the 28th of September. All right, so Wednesdays trying to keep very consistent with a few exceptions, and then on Sundays we're trying to get 2 live streams per month. All right, I hope that was helpful. Wilbert sharing, yes, Salvador and Lauro de Freitas. I stayed on a mission base near a neighborhood that we help. It's so nice, Mike Wilbert. Thank you for sharing. We paint houses, repaired plumbing, fixed cars, had football games for local children. All right, Wilbert, so nice to hear. God bless you. All right, so I want to say thank you, everyone. Today it was a very busy live stream. I get really happy when I see a lot of participation like today. Okay, I want to say thank you again to Brazil Vibes. Brazil Vibes bought me lunch today, very generous. Brazil Vibes, thank you, all of you, for participating. I hope you are joining us next Wednesday on September the 10th, and wishing all of you a blessed rest of your Wednesday.